jobs. All right. Thanks everybody for coming. It's our first New Jersey Revit Users Group meeting, and it's going to be what's new in Revit 2015 and related Autodesk products. I'd like to thank Microsoft Resources, Warren Wolf, Harry Schubert, and the rest of the team. They've been really helpful and helped me get this started, and they're going to be one of our sponsors, and they're providing the food and the speaker for tonight, and they've also provided a lot of support, which has made it possible for me to get here. DLB Associates will be providing the space. And Reed Addis is going to be the speaker tonight. He's also with Microsoft Resources. So the reason that I started this group is because there's a really great group in New York City, the New York City Revit Users Group, but it's quite a hike to get there. And I thought that it would be nice to have something closer for us to get together, meet, discuss Revit and BIM, and to do some networking with local people and local professionals. Some of the future meetings will be sort of similar to this, where they're going to be driven by resellers, and they're going to be Autodesk products and second-party solutions. And we're also going to look to try to get local professionals and speakers to come here and talk more on a technical basis and practical applications and do tips and tricks types of seminars. I have a couple people that are lined up already that I'm talking to for the new year. So probably going into the new year, it's going to be a little bit more reseller based, and we'll sort of get to know some of our sponsors, get to know the people in the group. Some of the people weren't able to make it tonight. So I think that once we get more participation from the outside, we can start to see what type of groups are going to be here and what professions they're in. So we could sort of build a group around, plan the meetings around the people that are in the group, right? The meetings are for the users, by the users. I know a lot of you in here have already helped by sending out some invites to other people. So we want the group to grow. We want participation. We want people from all different aspects of the AEC industry, because it's really important, especially utilizing BIM, that we talk to people that are in the other fields and we see what they're doing and we see what their challenges are, so we can work together and to really find a solution to be able to implement BIM quicker into the industry. We've seen that, you know, we keep seeing it that it's almost there and it's so almost there, but it's always just trying to get everybody to coordinate. So if we have a group like this, I think that it'll be one step to help us all get there quicker. If anybody wants to present at a meeting, I know there's a couple people in here that I've already talked to. If you have a topic or you presented something before, let me know. And I talked about already letting other people know. So everybody's already seen the New Jersey Rug meetup site. Dan G says it's his favorite site now. He likes all the updates that he gets from it because he doesn't have any friends that send him email. So he was wondering if there was something I could do to get him more updates. But if you haven't been there, which I think you all have, that's where we're going to be posting the new meetings. And hopefully the reminders will slow down a little bit. I was probably getting a little aggressive in trying to get the word out there a little bit over the last couple of weeks. All of our meetings are going to be broadcast live on WebEx, and each month I'll put the link under the calendar. So if you're going to go on live for WebEx, you can get the link there. Asking questions, if people are in WebEx and we're also recording the meetings, so if you can go up to one of the microphones and ask the question, then it will be on the recording and people on the other end will be able to hear it. And people who are remote, they're going to type in their questions, and then Nick will relay them.
I think, here we go.
So again, I want to thank Microsoft Resources. We worked with Microsoft Resources for a really long time now. They've always been really helpful. They always come right out here. We have a really good relationship. I've been to a lot of their events. I'm really happy to have them on board. It's really great. And today, Reed Addis, a BIM specialist at Microsoft Resources. Reed is a registered architect and has studied architecture at Cornell University and has a master's of architecture at the University of Pennsylvania. And here's Reed's contact information. If you have any questions about the presentation today or something maybe in a professional type of stuff. So again, I want to thank everybody for coming tonight and everybody who's helped out. And Robert from the New York City Revit Users Group, he was really helpful. He spent a lot of time helping me out, a lot of phone calls. He's with the Ray Architects, really great guy, and he helped me get here. So I want to thank him too. All right.
We're good?
Thanks, Reed.
Okay. Let's see if we can get out of here. Is that one? Or not. And away we go. There we go. So it didn't like two PowerPoints trying to start up at the same time. What the heck? So I'm Reed Addis. I'm a registered architect. We're dealing with Revit architecture. That's R-A, right? So coincidence? I'm not sure. I was going to also start by saying that I'm probably the oldest guy in the room. I saw a couple other gray hair individuals. I'm 63, so I don't know. Do I win? Do I or not? I'm close? Okay. So I like to introduce myself as the oldest guy in the room. In fact, I'm probably older than most people's fathers. Don't tell me I'm older than your grandfather, because that really hurts me. I've been using the software a long time. I've been using Revit on and off since it was first introduced by a bunch of really dedicated people in Waltham, Massachusetts. And when I went up there in 1999, I thought they were all out of their minds, right? So all the drawings in one file, people sharing the same drawing, all the, this was on machines that, could barely do minor calculations. But Autodesk didn't think they were crazy, acquired them in 2002, and starting around 2006, it became a very viable product, the 8.1, and I've kind of been playing with it on and off since then. I've been with Microsol since 2007. My first assignment in January was to go to Bermuda for a week. So I know it was a tough job, but when I got there, I said, well, where is the training going to happen? They said, well, it's in Reed House. How is it spelled? Oh, yeah, it's spelled like my name. And, well, what's the street it's on? Well, it's on Reed Street. So, they couldn't send anyone else to do that, right? Turns out William Reed was the first governor of Bermuda, so Reed is everywhere in Bermuda. So you see it's not me. It has nothing to do with me. And then about 2 years later, they sent me to Rochester, New York in January. So it was minus 10 degrees and snowing. So payback, is, what they say. Okay, so I'm going to take you through what's new in the 2015 product in the architectural end of things. How many people are not architects in here? Probably everyone, right? Yeah, a bunch of people. So I'm going to tell you about the other things, but I don't really have any drawings that actually show you the new structural and the MEP features, but I will take you through them at least to get them mentioned. There was also when the release came out, the big thing was sketchy lines. And we were all, really? Sketchy lines, huh? That's the best you could throw at us. We didn't fix stairs. We didn't, roofs are still difficult, but we've got now sketchy lines. And so we lived with that for a while. And, sketchy lines are pretty cool. And putting symbols in schedules is pretty cool. There's a bunch of other cool things I'll show you as well. But there was an update recently for subscription-only users. So assuming you're on subscription, there was a major update 4 or UR2, and there's some really amazing stuff that they added in there. So a lot of the stuff that we thought was going to come in the release itself has actually migrated in. And then there was an add-on from as an application that you can get from the App Store for doing site design. It's not quite Civil 3D, but it's pretty cool stuff. So let's see what we got. Oh yeah, so here's this is the stuff that's new in the pre-update 4 release, and you'll notice that the first item that they added here was sketchy lines. That was the big guy, and anti-aliasing. So that wasn't what I wanted. Anti-aliasing was the other big thing too. So we had that, and some nice ray tracing things. There are some other things here having to do with views on sheets and duplicating views, and a few other things in here that were kind of interesting. I'm going to talk about some of those as well. Structural enhancements. There were enhancements to the analytical model, but a lot of the big enhancements had to do with reinforcing and rebar. And a lot of the structural engineers I've talked to said that they don't show rebar. Is that sort of, any structural engineers in here disagree, agree? No, everyone's quiet. Okay, so apparently that's really sort of more for the contractor to show than the structural engineer to show. But I mean, it's cool if you're the contractor as well. And there were some additional items added for the mechanical engineers in terms of calculation methods and a few other things. So, okay, so for architects, so visualization, they added sketchy lines, right? So let me show you the sketchy lines, at least in a plan view. Oh, and by the way, if you don't have this free add-on product, the question is, why don't you have it? Let me open up the sketchy lines view, and I'm going to open up just a regular view here. So normally when you're in Revit, you're going to be doing things like this. You're going to tab your views, and in order to get one view to one place where you want it, you really don't have much control over that. There's this really cool add-on product that is free. And notice I'm able to kind of just really quickly just decide what I like. I can even come over here to add-ins and decide that I'd like things a little bigger, a little smaller, or I can choose to put things across the right or across the bottom. So this is just really the sweetest product, and it's free of charge. It's called Palladio X. So if you look for it on the Apps Exchange store, look for Palladio X, the famous Italian architect with an X after his name. And if you get approval from management, I highly recommend taking a look at this add-on. Anyway, the sketchy lines feature was basically a visual graphics enhancement. And let's see if can I do this? Does that show up on the screen? Nah, that doesn't show up on the screen. Okay. So there's this visual enhancement. Let's see if this does. Yes. Over here, you can get over to the graphic display options. You can either click on the edit button here, or you can click down here to get to them. But it's really a little bit faster to click at that particular point. And then there's a new section here called sketchy lines. And you can enable sketchy lines, and then you have the ability to adjust both the jitter and the extension features. So you can kind of play with these, and you notice you can, that's after Warren's been in Starbucks a little too long. So, but you can kind of play with this and get it adjusted to really what you like. One of the things that, I kind of said, hey, sketchy lines, who really cares about that? But one of the things that's interesting about doing those kinds of drawings, something where you take a drawing that looks, let's say, like this, and turn it into a drawing that looks like, let's see if I can get this guy out of here. So you take a drawing that looks like this and turn it into a drawing that now looks like this, right? So the idea is that this gives it a little less formal quality that you really can't get inside of the Revit product itself, or even external to this particular product. And when you're making presentations to clients or zoning boards, I found in my career I presented to lots of different zoning boards, and a lot of them get a little persnickety with you when your drawing looks like it's about 90% through, CDs, and that you're basically just assuming they're going to rubber stamp the drawing as it goes through. So what you can do instead is take this, or the same thing with your client. You can take your drawing, run it through, sketchy lines, print that out, and take that to your presentations. I guess the best line I ever heard about that is when it was in AutoCAD. There was a guy in an office who used to do these nice sketchy line renderings and stuff. And I said, well, look, I can now take my drawings and I can do sketchy lines. He says, oh, so you have a $6,000 product now that does what I do with a pencil. And I said, yeah, I guess so. So, but I can change my view faster than you can and get that sketchy line view. So sketchy lines it's kind of a nice new feature. One of the other things that they added was this anti-aliasing improvement. I'm not going to try to show you that, but there's sometimes at the edges of your view, you'll end up with the stair-stepping that you get when you have a diagonal in there. And the anti-aliasing allows you to kind of blend a little bit what that view looks like. So there's an option for each individual view where you can take it and smooth anti-aliasing, or you can also do that in the option dialog box for basically all your views. So that's a new feature that doesn't cost anything in terms of performance. So if you're doing those kinds of drawings or rendering that doesn't quite get you the quality you want, don't forget about being able to do that. What do we got next? Ray trace usability improvements. The ray tracing, I guess they've just really improved that a bit in terms of what the rendered images look like. Let's see if I can take you into one of those. Let me maximize this. Take you into one of the 3D views. There's my kitchen view as a rendering. You now have the ability with ray tracing. Again, one of the items at the bottom of the screen in display options for ray tracing. And ray tracing will start up, and I think they've just improved the performance. The idea behind ray tracing is that it's going to bounce light around in your file, and it will continue to bounce the light forever. So you kind of get this interactive rendering. It's kind of progressing along at the bottom here, and it's thinking about it. And there we go. So it starts this interactive process of rendering the image, and ray tracing really never stops. So at some point you can basically say that you're done with that. It's not quite the same as rendering the image, but it gets you a fairly high quality material rendering without having to go through that rendering process and kind of waiting for the screen to finally update. When you're done, you simply pick stop, and then you have the ability to save that into the file or export it, or simply close that out and move back to one of the other modes for the file. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Pinned element enhancements. So prevent pinned elements from being deleted. Delete elements by unpinning them first. Delete objects in non-graphic context. So the pinned element, the idea behind that, let me get back to a plan view. Let's see what we got going on here. Okay. So with column grid lines, if you choose to pin the element, and so now I've got that pinned. If you choose a couple of these guys and then go to delete them, right, it's not going to delete the one that you have pinned. And it doesn't, that's kind of a nice feature. So, now you don't have the ability to kind of lock a layer like you do in AutoCAD, but now when you've pinned the element, at least it's not going to delete it on you. The other thing that you can do with pinned elements, obviously that was added in the previous release, but under the Modify button, you also have an option to choose whether or not to select pinned elements, and that's also available down at the bottom of the screen. So there's some little icons down here at the bottom, and you can basically do the same thing down here at the bottom of the screen that you can do up here under the Select. So you can choose to not select pinned elements. Another thing that's kind of nice, this was from the previous release, but you may or may not have noticed it, was the select elements by face. So if you're working in a drawing and you're trying to get this floor slab, right, I absolutely can't pick the floor slab. So you kind of tab around, you try to find the edges of it, the same thing with ceiling grids, and you can now basically say select element by face, and you can now basically pick that surface. So it's kind of a really nice feature, but it's also very deadly if you're doing a window or a crossing, because the first thing that happens is you pick on a face usually, and then it gets selected and moved or deleted. So just be aware of that. So slight improvement to the pinned element feature. Family parameters. Okay, so this is one that really works for everyone. You have the ability to now change the order of family parameters. For anyone who's ever created any kind of family, you start putting your parameters in, and you sort of kind of hope maybe they'll go in alphabetic order. They don't really do that. Sometimes they sort in really weird ways. You're like, oh, I just thought of a new parameter to add, and it adds it in a totally different section, and so it just becomes a nightmare of trying to find the right parameter. You also have the ability to add help information to the parameters. So let me see if I can show you that. So let's see if we can look at a door here. So with a door, looking at the type parameters, and I really would love to, but it doesn't seem to pick it up if I zoom in, does it? Or it does. No, it doesn't. Darn. Okay, so I've got the zoom feature on my laptop, and it doesn't pick it up here. So you notice that you've got, for your door, I've got thickness, height, and then way down here I've got width. Most architects, we like it so that it's width, then height, and then thickness. So, between height and width, I've got all of this other stuff in there. So one of the things that you can do now is if I go over to edit the family, and I go in and take a look at the properties for that, I'm able to actually pick the width option, and now I have move up. So I can actually move that to the top of the list. And I can move height next. So I've got width, height, and thickness. That is really, really cool. If you've ever done families, if you've never done families, it's like, big deal. But if you've done families, or you've even tried to deal with families in your files, this is a huge, huge improvement. I'm going to say okay to that. I'm going to not show you a little sneak preview of this guy here. We'll come back and talk about that guy in a minute. But I'll go ahead and load that into the project, and I'll overwrite the parameters. And now if I pick that and go over and take a look at the edit the type, I now have width and height and thickness. So it's great. You can have these existing files, and now in 2015, you can open up and reorder the parameters really any way you want. I know it seems like Reed is easily, pleased, but I'm not really. That's really a pretty big item. Okay, what do we got? Tooltips in family parameters. That's another thing that you can do. So as you're adding a parameter, you'll notice down here. I won't take you through that, but you've got the ability to add a tooltip. So why would you want to add a tooltip? Well, you sometimes will have some kind of a formula in there, like half stair width, or beam minus coping, or something of that sort, and you're really trying to figure out what the person who had created that was really thinking. And you can add now a little tooltip that explains up to 250 characters what it is that particular parameter was all about. So that's kind of a nice feature. Okay, where are we going here? So there's a new feature, consistency with text leaders for our parameters, for tags, and there's a new parameter for elevation at top. So one of the items that people wanted was to be able to, instead of having it to the left or to the right, was to be able to put that information instead of kind of underneath the word level over here, to be able to actually add the parameter over there. One of the tag things had to do with dragging out your tags and trying to have the elbow kind of come with it. Let me see if I can kind of work with this. Let's see if I can take this guy and add a leader to that. So let me grab and move that over. All right, so when we move that around in previous releases, there were kind of issues with the elbow not kind of staying exactly where it was supposed to, the same way it did with a text leader. And again, doesn't seem like a really big item, but it's a kind of nice fit and finish item that was added in this particular release. Just take that off and move it on over. Okay. So enhanced schedules and material takeoffs, views on sheets, duplicate views, and view references. So the enhanced schedule and material takeoffs, let me show you what goes on with that. The schedules now, you have the ability, for instance, this particular chair, I think that particular chair, if I go over and look at the type, you'll notice that I have now the ability to add a couple of different images. So one is an image, and then there's a type image that you can add. And you do that basically in the family file. So if I come over and open that up in the family editor and look over in the properties, you'll have the ability to add that as an image. Now, one of the things that absolutely threw me off, so when you get to 2015, you get this kind of image here. And it was like, well, but there's no identity data. Where do I add that? And I searched and searched and searched for where this was. And sure enough, it said there's all this stuff under identity data. And then I finally, after a few minutes, noticed that that arrow was pointing down instead of up. And so for some reason, by default, they hide all the parameters. So if you kind of come into these things now and you're like looking for where all this stuff is, like I was for a long time, longer than I probably should have, just go ahead and just click on that little button. It'll certainly help you out. You also have the ability to, again, save images. So all I did was to go on to Herman Miller's website and downloaded these images of their chair. And then went out here, there's an ellipsis button that should allow me to go out and choose the chair that I wanted. There are certain restrictions they suggest on the size and pixels of that particular image. And then that is something that you can schedule. So let me go ahead and close this. So that can be scheduled. So if I come down into the schedules and come down to the furniture schedule, I have those listed here. So if I were to look at the parameters, one of the parameters that I added was type image. And you go, well, that's really not a very interesting image, right? So it doesn't actually display the image in the schedule. It only displays the image when it's finally placed onto a sheet. So when you finally get that schedule onto a sheet, you now have that image show up. So that could be useful for people that are doing interiors work. It could also be could be useful in terms of some mechanical products if you're trying to show a certain valve or fitting or structural connection or something of that sort. You have the ability now to do that, and it's just as easy as saving an image as a PNG file of a certain size, adding that to the family's parameter. I found that type image works better than image, so set it as the type image for that particular family, and it comes through when you place it on the sheet. So very nice. Oh, views on sheets. So let's go over to our sheets. Let's go back over to here. Yeah. So one of the things that was added in one of the previous releases was the ability to double-click inside one of your views to activate it, right? So you could double-click inside a view to activate it. But in the past, to deactivate the view, you used to have to right-click and pick deactivate the view. Well, if you're not a right-click person, the answer is always right-click if you can't find something, right? But, you'll be here, and then new users are like, they'll call up and say, everything's grayed out. I can't do anything. I don't understand. Oh, yeah, you have to right-click. For some of us that came from the AutoCAD world, I make the analogy of these things basically being viewports on sheets. And in AutoCAD, you used to just double-click outside the viewport, right? So, no big deal. Why can't Revit do that? Well, yeah, so Revit does that now in 2015, right? So again, it's like, well, what's the big deal, right? AutoCAD had that for years, but it's kind of a big deal at this point. So you have the ability to just double-click inside or outside of a view and to activate it or deactivate it. Another thing, I know it really sounds picky, but let me see if I can get rid of this over here. Well, I really wish it would zoom on my screen, but it doesn't, so we'll deal with it. So over here, you see I've got level 2. I'm going to delete this copy. So we have level 2, and if you wanted to make a copy of a view, you would right-click and say duplicate view, right? And what it did immediately was it put the word copy of level 3 or copy of section B or copy of. So if you're doing sections and you've got 50 sections on your sheet and you make copy of, what it does is it immediately opens the view, but it sorts it now up to the C's instead of in the S's, right? So thank you very much. Now you have to go look for it and rename it. So I know it's not, it's not handrails and stairs. That's still coming in some future release. But if you right-click now and say duplicate your view, right? It now says, oh, guess what? It's level 2, copy 1, right? So it leaves you right there so that you can easily rename that particular view, right? So that's minor change, but it kind of has major implications. It's kind of a really nice feature, especially when it's very, very easy to create a new view, not realize that you've moved into that view, and now you have, renaming issues and things of that sort. So view references, you now have the ability, they don't have to be child views of a parent view anymore to do view references from one sheet to another. So you now have the ability to say, you can add a reference. I don't know why I'm using my hands. No one at home can see me. But if you now have the ability to put a reference line on and a tag and say, C sheet S3 or M4 for that particular view. So view references have been enhanced a bit. Let's come back to here. Images and schedules. Oh, I did that already. So, okay. Couple of minor things. Assembly codes are now available. Assembly code settings are now available if you're actually using those for working with, let's say, either scheduling or tying into external programs that produce specifications. Another thing that you can do is you can actually now import IFC files. I don't actually have an IFC file, but instead of linking it in, you now can actually bring it in just like you can bring in a CAD document. Now, you weren't able to work with phasing. So someone asked, well, if I bring that in, am I able to do phasing? I think you'll see that in a little bit, that there's some abilities. It's either that or work sets. You have the ability to do some additional manipulation in the subscription update. Some changes in the keynote settings, and you can now have shared parameters in view titles. So you've got those particular changes as well. Hidden lines. I haven't decided how I feel about this one yet, but I'm gonna show it to you. There's kind of some neat new things that they've done to help improve potentially, being able to see through your model, but not have it be in hidden line mode. So let me take you into a view that's, I don't know why that guy's coming up. Let me take you into a view that we've got. I think I've got an isometric in here. Right. So can I do this one? Let's see what we got. Architectural. Let's come down to. I'm not going to be able to do it in that particular view. Let's do it. Let me get to an isometric. I'm not going to get to an isometric. Let me go to my 3D view. There we go. Okay. So in my isometric view, I've got some additional options in here called show hidden lines and discipline. So let me kind of circle that. So show hidden lines, so the discipline is currently set to coordination. Show hidden lines is currently set to none. You have the ability to control that to say by discipline. And when you do something like that, what you can do is you can pick an object, let's say this particular roof, and then on the view tab, you have the ability, well, let me turn on show hidden lines. I can pick the roof, and then I can pick the item that, say, this particular wall there. Did I get that? Well, I'm set to coordination. Let's see if we can do it architectural. Okay, so let's say pick this. Yes, so let me pick this, and then let me pick this wall. There we go. So you're now seeing, architecturally, you can see that wall through the roof. Or I could, let's see if I can do, let me pick this wall here. See if I can pick that wall and then pick this interior wall, right? So you can start to do those sorts of things where you can selectively choose which ones you want to show. You can also choose to remove the hidden line. So again, you would basically go through that same process and reverse it so that it would remove the items one at a time. You also can simply say, well, just show me everything. So you can go ahead and say pick all. And then what it does, it's almost useless at that point, but it shows you everything that's hidden by everything else in terms of the disciplines. So let me see if I go down to coordination, right? So, you know, that one isn't quite as useful as it could be, but if you do by discipline, it gives you that ability to selectively choose the elements that you want to have show through. Okay. So I haven't figured out a complete use for that yet, but I'm sure there's something. Let's see if we can get back into the PowerPoint. Revision improvements. I'm not gonna go through these. There is the ability now. In the past, you really weren't able to delete revisions, and now you have that ability. So there's been a button added for deleting. There are more tools for sketching revision clouds, and then there's a minimum arc distance. Haven't used that one in a while. Let me just see if I can come back to, let's say, level 1. So on the Annotate tab, you've got your revision cloud, and I believe the settings for that. So you've got the ability to place the revision cloud. You also have the ability to just simply draw it. So I can simply draw a series of arcs if I want. Well, except I wanted to go the other direction, right? So you have the ability to make these picks and create these arcs, right? And the size of the arcs is controlled, I think it's in the Manage tab. It's in one of the settings on the Manage tab, and it's probably an additional setting. I don't recall exactly where it is, but there's a setting that controls how big the size of the arcs are. So you now have additional controls, not having to just place it as a rectangular boundary, but you have the ability to draw as kind of really any shape that you want. So let me go ahead and close out of that and say, no, I don't want to do that. So, you know, people were asking, can I make different shapes and can I control the size of the revision cloud? The answer is yes, you can do that in this release. Okay, so we talked about deactivating the view, double-clicking. Trim extend multiple elements. This, while doesn't seem like, you know, a major improvement, it does create the ability to do things a little more efficiently than you were in the past. So just to illustrate it with some walls, if I draw a couple of walls in here, let me just put this guy in here, and then I'll place one here. Let me place another one here. Place another one, let's say here. Okay. So in the past, if you were trying to do the multi-trim on the Modify tab, you had the single line trim extend and you had the multiple trim extend. So in the past, what you had to do is you had to pick your start element, And then you had to pick your other elements individually. And now you can just do a crossing through them all, and they all, trim back or extend to. And again, you're like, yeah, well, I was able to do that for years in AutoCAD, but yeah, you weren't ever able to do that before in Revit. And so some of that resistance and frustration that you had initially moving over is now gone. So it's more of a fit and finish than some extraordinarily major enhancements like tabbing your palettes. But again, it's every little bit helps during the day. Okay. Building analysis. If you're doing any kind of energy analysis, they've improved the algorithms. In the previous release, they actually changed things around a little bit. So if you were using previous versions of Revit before 2014, it really didn't want you to do anything other than have very, very large rooms or spaces to do your calculations. And now on the Analyze tab, under the calculations, you have the ability to either use conceptual mass mode, or you can now use the building element mode. And through using Green Building Studio Online through Autodesk 360, you can actually export your energy calculations and run those all on the web. It's now all web-based. Again, IFC linking. There's a new tab in the Manage Links dialog box for that. The Manage Links dialog box, it doesn't seem like a big deal, but prior to 2015, in order to have a link added when you went over to the Insert tab, if you went over to Manage Links, if you wanted to place a link in your file, you simply had to come over here and choose to link in a Revit file, right? So now you had to go out and find your Revit file. And you were working basically through two different dialog boxes. Now, inside of here, they added the Add button, so you can simply add your links right in here. Again, seems kind of like a minor improvement, but in terms of usability, if you're using links, and most people in a multidiscipline place are, it can make your life a little bit easier during the day. Okay, so all of those were in there. So now we get into the subscription update. Some of these things I haven't played with. Some of these things I have. So Dynamo, Dynamo is kind of in the labs, the Autodesk labs. I don't know if anyone's played with Dynamo, but it's kind of an interactive design tool, basically visual scripting. It allows you to kind of drag things around within the dialog box, and it actually affects what your building looks like. So that's actually under one of the add-ins, and it's called Dynamo 7.0 Visual Programming. And some people have been playing with it. Some people haven't, like me. But you get this dialog box that had been in the labs before, and allows you to basically create these shapes and then drag things around on the screen to design. So no more sketching on napkins. Now you're going to be kind of doing electronic sketching. So that's built into the product. Another thing that was added in the release was this web-based environment for managing environmental collaboration through Green Building Studio. So that was, again, an external program. And there have been some changes in the energy analysis, so several methods have been added inside of Green Building Studio as well in this particular release. Wall joins. One of the things that occurs when walls connect to each other, either at corners or at intersections, is that there's always some kind of join. Now, you can kind of see here that the vertical wall is winning over the horizontal wall, or this particular join here is coming to the middle. So in order to do wall joins, what you used to have to do under the Modify tab was you used to have to pick the wall join tool, and you used to have to kind of hover over that particular join, right? But if you wanted to do more than one, you really couldn't do that. Now, if you hold down the control key, you have the ability to select multiple wall joins. And again, might not seem like kind of a major issue, but if you had 3 or 4 wall joins that you wanted to change from one wall join winning versus the other, you could now go through and make multiple changes at one time versus doing it one at a time. So it was a requested item. That was something that was added. Again, it's only in the update 4 subscription. So if you're not on subscription, you don't actually get that additional feature. IFC references and phases. So now in your linked model, you're able to use that for alignment references, you can dimension, you can snap, and it will host some of the face-based families with a linked IFC model. The other thing that it can do is you now can control phasing inside of the, and then again, that was asked just a couple of months ago. One of our clients asked me if you could control phasing in the IFC model, because when that comes in, you might have core and shell and tenant fit out, and you've got this IFC model of the existing building produced by someone else, and there's just no way to turn things off, and you can now do that. Shaft openings, again, not a big deal, but the base constraint value, if you're doing a shaft opening, it's now going to default to the level of the current activated plan view. And again, the instance properties have been reordered. So the instance properties when you were creating shafts, this is probably not a real good plan for a shaft, but on the architecture tab over here, we've got shaft. So the parameters over here were all, it's a technical term that we use, it's called fakakta, right? So they were all just messed up. They were all out of order. And it was like, people were like, well, I've got the top constraint, it's above the bottom constraint. And so people were setting things just like willy-nilly. So now they have the base constraint, base offset, top constraint, top offset. They've gone through and reordered things. Just makes life, it's one of those things that just makes life a little bit easier for all of us. Site design. I'm not going to try to get into it because it's really, really, really a big program. But Site Designer had been a separate product that you used to have to purchase from Eagle Point. And that product was somewhere hovering around $1,000, I think. And it was really pretty cool. It was pretty complicated. It allows you to, if you've ever done any kind of site design in Revit, it's just a nightmare to try to move around the contour lines, right? You've got all these little dots and all of this, and trying to do cut and fill stuff or putting curb cuts in. You have to split the site, and then you have to like pick all the edges and don't pick inner, points. And this really makes it more like a civil 3D product. It actually has the ability to add parking lots, driveways, sidewalks, curbs, curb cuts. It's really a fascinating product. I haven't really had time to play with it. Now, it's not civil 3D. So if you have to cut road profiles and a whole bunch of other things, this ain't what it is. But if you're really trying to manipulate a topography inside of Revit using tools inside of Revit, this is really a wonderful thing, and it's free. It's a free add-on. You go to the Exchange store and you download it, and you just load it on in and can start playing with it. So if you actually looked at settings, if I actually brought that up, there are lots and lots and lots of settings in here too. So yeah, this is not you just come in and start drawing a couple of lines around and moving it. Really, it's actually better if you have a bit of a civil background. But it's kind of a nice bonus, and I think you're going to see more and more people taking advantage of that nice add-on that you got for subscription. Perspective views. Okay, so when I'm doing training and creating perspective views, when you go to create a perspective view, there's a little checkbox on the option bar that says perspective. Right? So, well, of course I want to create a perspective, right? So if you uncheck that, you get an orthographic projection, and that's the end of it, right? So you get an orthographic projection, and there's no way to work with that. So what you have the ability to do now is you can right-click, and you can tell it to switch to an orthographic projection. You can also now edit in perspective. So you can actually pick elements and move them around. You can pin and unpin elements, and you can align different elements in there. You can also reset the camera target to the center of the vision or the field of that particular view. So let's see if I can bring up a perspective view. Some of the perspective views let me do it, and then some of them don't. And I haven't fully, of course, I picked the one that's not the perspective view. How about this one? There we go. So there's my perspective view. Beautiful perspective view, right? And at the bottom here, by the way, if you missed this in previous release 2014, I think, you were able to lock your 3D views, so you wouldn't lose the image. So you had that ability. In this particular release now, this is the update 4. You have the ability to go to the view cube, and like you could in AutoCAD, you can right-click, and there's now toggle to parallel 3D view. So you can very quickly now go to basically an isometric view. This is where you now get your, let's see if I can get back to manage, modify. So this is where you can get to your modify tools if you want. And then when you're done playing with it, you can now come in and right click and say toggle to perspective view. So, that is kind of a major deal in this particular release, being able to switch back and forth from that point of view. Edit target, or reset the target. So if you came in and started playing with this, if I do F8, ooh, that's F9, let's try F8. And I come here and say, let's orbit a little bit. And maybe I'll look, this way or something. I now have the ability to pick the edge of the view. And there's this option now called reset target. So if I click reset target, it now resets the target to the center of the view. So if I can pick that, doesn't look like it actually changed much there. Okay, well, it didn't really, I guess I haven't actually moved. Let's see if I move F8. I would have to do what? I'm just trying to think of how I might change the view. See if that does it. Probably not going to show me. Yeah, it's not actually changing it. But you can get it to do that again if you simply pick the edge of the view and tell it to reset the target. Of course, it's not going to work for me at the moment. Let's go ahead and close this guy over here. Okay. So you have that ability. If you've messed up your view or you want to reset the target to the center of the view, you can do that. Again, you can toggle back and forth. Oh, search methods. So some of the interesting things, you used to be able to do search for views, but now you have the ability to search when you're creating a call-out view or when you're doing component placement. So for instance, if I were trying to, let's say, reference another view, let me go to the first floor plan. And I were trying to create a call-out view. Let me close some of my hidden views. Okay, so if I'm trying to create a call-out view on the View tab, and I choose the call-out tool, you'll notice that you have the ability to, under the reference another view, you have the ability to, from the drop-down list, right, you have a lot of views in there, but you have the ability now with a search to say that you just want to look for certain things. Like I could start with FL right? And immediately it starts to sort my list. And one of the things I noticed when I was working on a project with a client in Washington, D.C., that they had dozens and dozens and dozens of call-out views. And so when they were trying to do these references to these other views, they would get this long list, and they were like, I'm not quite sure if it's this one or that one. You can now shorten that list to a much finer level of accuracy than rather than having to scroll through them. Another thing that was added in the previous release of the software, and you might not be aware of it, at least I'm pretty sure it was in the previous release, was when you are referencing a callout now, when you go to place a callout. Oh, and the other thing is that you'll notice that the reference another view used to be on the option bar, and in the update they moved it up to here. So what would happen was that if you referenced another view and you chose that view, you could never change it. So if you reference the wrong view in the list, I meant to do A2 instead of A2.1, you basically had to delete the call out and start over again. And that was added, I think in 2014, the ability to basically now just change your reference view. So that was kind of a huge addition. But now you have that search feature. The other thing you also have is now when you're placing components, let's say I'm looking for a particular type of component, I have my drop-down list, and it's like, I've got trees, and I've got light fixtures, and I've got toilets, and I've got all this stuff in here, right? So you're scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. Now there's this little search item here, right? So if I start with the letter W, right, it just brings up all of the items that have W in there. Or if I start with, I don't know if there's one that starts with P or not, but it looks for that particular letter, and it's searching through and finding just the items that conform to that particular set of characters that you're looking for. So again, makes it a little bit easier for searching. It's not quite tool palettes where you can, choose to have only plumbing fixtures or only structural elements or mechanical items, but the search item is certainly going to make it a lot easier to find what you're looking for rather than kind of scrolling through that list. Again, that's in the subscription only. Reveal constraints. So whenever we constrained one object against another, there was really sort of no way to know what was constraining what without actually selecting that particular element. And then you would see this little constraint lock, but it wouldn't always tell you, what was constrained to what. So in this particular release, let's see if I can just make this work on level 2. Yeah, so let me work with level 2. I'm going to go into here. Let me take out the colors. Okay. So let's say I would like. I know this sounds like a really bad idea, but let's say I would like to take this column line and align it with the edge of the door. Probably a better idea to line the door with the edge of the column, but I don't have enough room at that particular point with the door. Actually, maybe if I move this, let me try moving this guy up a little bit. That might work a little better. Okay, so let's take this door and say that we want to align it, the frame, to the edge of this particular grid line here. So I'll come over to the Modify tab, I'll choose the Align tool, I'll pick my grid line, and I can now pick the edge of that door, and it's aligned and locked, right? Okay. So now I really don't know what happens if I, go to move that door, right? If I move the door and then, it didn't do it. I didn't lock it. Someone says I really should lock it. Let's do that again. Align this, and then take this, and yes, click the lock to align it. Okay, so now I've locked and aligned those. So now if I pick this door and decide that I want to move the door, I'm also moving the grid line. Of course, the grid line is pinned, so it's not going to let me move it. But if you wanted to see what was being constrained to what, there's now a new option down here on the view control bar that's called Reveal Hidden Elements. And so when you click that, it'll show you all of the items that have been constrained. And it does this with this dashed line through the screen. So you can see there's another dashed line here going through. So you very quickly can see what's been aligned with what, so that you can go in there and make those adjustments. So I could say, oh, well, let's see what's going on here. Oh, that's locked. Let me unlock that so it can get repositioned. And then you simply come to the bottom and turn off that display. So it's kind of nice. It may be even more useful when you're in the family editor. I haven't checked to see if it's there. We'll check that in a second. Selecting host for tags, specifying the host tag for a host element for a tag. Afterwards, you can select the tag and you can change the host element. So now I'm really not sure exactly why you might do that, but let's say, for instance, for some reason I tagged door 105 and I really meant to tag this door over here 103. So I can simply choose the door tag 105, pick a new host, pick that door, and that now updates to 103. So it's pretty fast to be able to simply, choose your item and, oops, let's see if we can do that again. Pick a new host, right, and update it. So you can switch it around if you've accidentally tagged something that you meant to tag something else next to it. That's now added in the subscription release. Annotate stairs and risers. So you can specify the default properties before placing the annotation. Again, I'm not sure how many people would actually take advantage of this, but on the Annotate tab, there is a new item over here for there's stair path, and you also have something over here now called tread number. And so if you pick on the stair, it'll actually now go through and number the treads. And again, you can adjust what that looks like ahead of time. There are settings for doing that. So that was added in. Something else I noticed after I did the upgrade was that when I opened a different file, you open a previous release of the file, you get this dialog box that says, it's updating a previous release, and you weren't really quite sure if it was updating release 2012 or 2014 or whatever. And I don't recall if there was a cancel option or not, but now when you go to open an earlier release, you have a dialog box that shows up and it tells you the release of the file of that project that you're opening. And it also gives you the opportunity to cancel. So if you have 2014 and 2015 on your machine, because you're working with two different architects or two different clients that are working in two different leases, and you suddenly open a project from 2014 in 2015 and save it, and it's like, oh, well, that's the end of that. We better restore from the backup. You now at least get that message that you're about to do this, and you have the ability to cancel. But if you're paying attention. The other thing having to do with families, I think the family is still open here. So yeah, I'm going to close this particular family, but let me open up I'll open up that chair family again. So when you go to edit the family, what would happen is when you made changes to the particular family and then wanted to reload it into your project, you would choose reload into the project. It switched you out of the family editor and right into your project. And so at some point, you came back and looked at your pull-down menu of views that were open, and you had 30 or 40 family files open, and you now had to go in and close all of those. So if you've actually made the change that you want and want to load that into the project and close the family, there's now a new button for doing that. So I can simply say, well, go ahead and load that into the project. I'm not going to make any changes, and it closes it, and it would reload it now. Because I didn't make any changes, there was no dialog box that showed up here. But now that particular family is closed, and it's not going to appear in that list. So again, not the end of the world, but makes life a little bit easier for you. Properties palette. One of the things in the properties palette that used to change was when you were working on different elements, if you were trying to change the same value property on different elements, every time you clicked outside the properties palette and clicked on a new element, it kind of reset the properties palette. So if you were trying to, for whatever reason, change your door numbers versus doing it at the tag itself, if you kind of came down and got to the door number, if you came out here and then click on this other door, it was actually resetting the properties palette, and now it's not doing that. Let me see if walls might have a little bit longer scroll. So if I came down to walls here and I click now on this other wall, what it would do in the properties palette was it basically just reset it to the top. And so you had to keep scrolling back and forth to get back down to that particular item. And now it holds the properties palette exactly where you left it. So again, you know, it sounds like a big whoop, but it's one of those things that if you're doing this all day long, it's going to really save you an amazing amount of time. Pin and unpin icons determine the relationship. You select the element to see the pin, unpin tool. A different set of pin, unpin images indicate a relationship with a host, such as a curtain wall, panel, or beam system. So again, if something is pinned, let's see if I can pick this item there. So you'll notice that it's got this pin. It's really hard to see because it keeps getting smaller. But the pin element for that, oh, and again, it won't zoom, sorry. And it just keeps zooming on me. Okay, so let's see if I can get back. There we go. Okay, so the pinned element, when I click on that, the pin for that has a little icon indicating that it's a little bit different from a pinned element that might just be a grid line. Let's see if I've got a grid line, a pin on there. Yep, so that one's locked. That one's not pinned, but a pinned element that isn't part of a system, a beam system or a curtain wall system, again, will have a different pin so that you at least get some visual indication of how it's working. Oh, this one might be of interest. One of the things that always would happen when you were placing, when linking a file together, the default option for linking Revit models was always center to center, right? And so when you linked your different files, it basically took the center of all of the elements in the file and lined them up. And so one of the things we always say is, you know, you're going to always want to do origin to origin. Even though that origin point isn't shown, you're going to want to switch to origin to origin. People forget to do that when you link the model. So Revit decided that they've changed the default position. So now when you're linking files, the default is going to be origin to origin. Again, it's not something that's earth-shattering in terms of you know, big wows, but it really, again, is a fit and finish kind of improvement to make life a little bit easier for you. Okay, structural engineers. This is going to be basically showing you PowerPoint slides because I don't have anything in here, so I'll go through these things moderately quickly. The analytical model has been enhanced, so there's now this local coordinate system. You have the ability to show your load boundaries and conditions, and there are improved links, improved analytical links. There's now reinforcement for parts. How many people actually take their structural elements and separate them into parts? Is there anyone that does that? Does anyone know what parts are? A few of you? No? Okay, so one of the things that was added in one of the previous releases of the software was the ability to take something like a wall or a structural slab or any sort of layered element, and the ability to take it and make it into what are called parts. So if you created parts, it actually separated all the layers of that element into separate elements. And so you had the ability to control their heights, you had the ability to control the hatch patterns in them. And if you were taking something like this as a contractor into Navisworks and wanting to schedule it, you could schedule the individual elements. And so that's what the parts are. And so they've added the ability to add surface reinforcing to the individual parts. And again, some new features in the rebar. Oops, in the rebar settings. Let me get back into the PowerPoint. Okay. You have the ability to number your reinforcing again. Show of hands, how many people actually put reinforcing in the structural drawings? No hands, right? So again, this may be more for the contractor and less for the engineer. Single sheet fabric placement, they've added some new tools for that, and some new presentation features for reinforcing. Multiple rebar annotation. Again, greater accuracy for as-built model definition, so location line, visibility, graphic justification, some more handles for snapping, setback improvements, and switching on and off the auto join feature. There are structural section properties, catalog profiles, more accurate quantities, analysis code added in this maintenance release. There was, again, some more rebar, so you could put rebar into 2D views, but a bunch of other items that might be of use. So for structural elements, you can now snap to imported CAD drawings. All structural elements will now snap to the imported geometry of imported drawings. There's been enhancements to 3D snapping. Snaps, a few of them like nearest endpoint and midpoint, are now available when defining structural elements along model lines. So a few other things there that were added in this particular release. This is the update release. Some more rebar stuff, right? So alignment reference of beam ends. You can now select multiple framing element instances to change their alignment. And the change reference tool to reset the setback framing elements, there's now a new tool for doing that. It looks like I didn't take out some of my notes. That's why that's still in there. I forgot to take that out of the PowerPoint. So sorry about that. That rebar just doesn't want to go away. Structural framing orientation, you can flip the structural framing elements. And there's a new user interface for structural elements. So there's an offset drop-down button for framing justification. That's been removed, and the Y and Z offset tools are now on the justification panel. And the properties for point loads, line loads, and area loads have been reorganized and regrouped in the properties palette. So, and analytical properties have been reorganized and regrouped. Oh, it looks like I left that alone. Okay, calculation methods. There have been some additional methods added in this particular release for MEP. Tag values before and after the tap. So it sounds kind of simple, but prior to the 2015, when you had a tap in a duct line and you reduced the CFM flow, Revit really wasn't able to recognize that. So whenever you tagged that duct, it just tagged it at the maximum flow. And now it recognizes that there's been a reduction in the CFM in that particular section of the ductwork. So that, I think that was a big improvement. There have been enhancements to the API for electrical. So again, if you're doing programming, you can make some adjustments to that particular item. There have been some additional country-specific content added. More important, in the subscription release, they've added sequencing for power circuits. They also allow you, when you're creating a circuit, Revit automatically connects to the most recently used panel for the current session. You can move circuit directly to a target slot without disrupting the other circuits. And there's ASHRAE table information that's been added. So that is the enhancements. And then we'll open it up for questions. I'm going to show you one other quick thing that, again, may not have known from the previous release. Let me go back to, let's see what I've got in terms of views. Just that particular view. Let's see if I can open up this approach view. There we go. So one of the things that was added in the previous release of the software. And again, it may not be a big deal in your model, but you have the ability. I'm going to just duplicate this view, and I'll call it approach, and I'll right click and rename that, and we'll call that exploded. How many of you have actually has anyone kind of played with moving the elements around in your 3D views? So I can pick this roof, and I can take this tool right here, and I can displace that particular element. Right? And I can pick this wall and choose to displace that element. So I can move this over to here, maybe move it out this way, maybe move it up here, right? And it starts getting a little spooky, right? So if you go back, well, what did it do to my model? Well, it didn't do anything to the model. It's just in that particular view. And you even have the ability, you can choose to add path lines, so you can tell it to, where it actually came from. So that was added in the previous release, and it's kind of an interesting way to deal with a model rather than trying to create multiple views that are kind of on top of each other. You can actually just start to take the model apart. So, okay. Anyway, I think there's a sign-in sheet in the front. So if you fill that in, or if you email marketing@microsolresources.com, you have AIA or PDH learning units. We give one learning unit for you sitting in here listening to me tonight. Our website, microsolresources.com. We're on Twitter. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. There's all kinds of different things. I have no idea what I'm doing when I get on my phone, right? I just start pressing buttons, and suddenly someone says, "Oh, I'm following you." And I said, "Well, where? Where are you following me?" No, I'm following you on Twitter. It's really how you're doing that. So I have no idea how any of this stuff works. You young guys, you guys understand all this stuff. As my daughter says, "Dad, like really, it's pathetic." But right. So I'm trying to get better and do tweeting and things like that. I actually understand now the difference between okay, so it's called a hashtag. I won't call it a pound sign, right? So it's the difference between the hashtag and the @ symbol, right? So I finally got that. And I finally call it a hashtag now instead of a pound sign. But I don't know. Do you when you call for someone and you say, "Well, press the hashtag on your phone," right? They don't say that, do they? So okay, anyway. So follow us. Feel free to send me emails, things of that sort. And at this point, I think I am pretty much done. So we can kind of open it up to questions, or eating more pizza, or going home, whatever sort of serves you best. And that's it. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Reed.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
you coming today.
Thank you.
And thanks for Microsoft for sponsoring our event. Our next event is going to be November 20th. It's going to be on a Thursday. We're going to be moving the meetings to the third Thursday of the month. And it's going to be BIM 360 Field and Glue. And Autodesk is going to be here to present that meeting. So I hope that some of you guys can show up again. I appreciate everybody who came out today. And look forward to seeing the group grow.
Does anyone have any questions? It's a quiet group, right? It's sort of like
All engineers.
It's all engineers. So yeah, so I've done training sessions. I guess I can say this politically correctly, right? It's all Asian in the room, and when you can't ask a question, right? Because no one is going to ask, no one's going to answer in that particular situation. So I learned basically what you say. Okay, what is the answer? So I used to point out. So, but thank you for attending and being so graciously attentive. Great.
All right,
okay,
thank you.
Thanks very much. And